Hey, okay. Eddie, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you about Touchstone Essentials. Yes. And I really want you to go in and just let us know what it's all about, and then hopefully I'll ask some questions that pique my curiosity. But the floor is yours.
Sure. Okay. Well, thank you, Stokely, for the invite and the chance to be with you and your audience. We always appreciate these chances, particularly when people are, trying to think thoughtfully about the world we live in, thoughtfully about themselves and their health and those dynamics. That's really important to us. And so let me start with just a brief background. I'm 62 years old, got a great wife, Maria, and a couple of kids. And really, I've been involved in health and nutrition, gosh, since I was probably about 26 or 27. And, probably like a lot of people, there was like an occurrence, a little bit of a life event that really sort of deepened my interest here. I had been modestly athletic when I was in school, nothing grand, run a few triathlons and things like that, but had been somewhat in decent shape. And then when I got out of school and got into the working world, particularly in those early years, right, you're just grinding on hours and you forget about exercise, or you forget about yourself. There's zero for most 20-year-olds. There's not a lot of self-care, particularly males. And so I had to get through work an insurance exam, and the exam came back terrible. The blood works, listed me in a category of risk like I was a heavy smoker. I didn't smoke. It's just I just had not been eating well. A lot of fast food, not paying attention. So my blood lipid profiles, my blood sugars, triglycerides, cholesterol, all that stuff was terrible. And it sort of jerked me back into reality that if you don't do something about these things, you wind up sort of a victim of your own habits, right? Your own high blood pressure medication, your own drugs to control blood sugars, blah blah blah. And so I decided to really dive into nutrition enough that I saw a job opportunity to get involved in the sales of nutritional products, and so I did. And that's really where my journey started. It was really not knowing a lot, but having a desire to see, what I could do to improve my habits and what I could do to kind of get some self correction. And really, in the early days, it wasn't a lot about going to an extreme. It was more about, and this is a big thing for me, for anybody listening. I don't have advice to sort of rip a band-aid off and go cold turkey and things like that. I just think that's hard to do. And I don't know that it sticks. And what I'm about in terms of my philosophy and approach, both personally and professionally, is to do things that make sense, maybe address some kind of pain point in life. Maybe you're concerned about your weight, or you're concerned about your blood pressure, or just want to get better fitness, and start seeing what incremental changes you can make that you can adapt into your lifestyle that stay around, stay with you, so that it's instead of this up and down sort of cycle of, hey, I'm going to make a pledge on New Year's and then into January I've completely forgotten it, or whatever it happens to be. And so I had a steady progress, and really that was sort of what was happening for me until my mom had a bit of an illness, went on undiagnosed, I think, for almost 3 years, and we learned that she had an autoimmune reaction to breast implants she had had when she was younger, and she was basically toxic. And that's the first time, at least with my level of education, I'd really come across sort of this dynamic of toxicity beyond thinking about when people are exposed in the workplace or otherwise, and just sort of began to get a feel, man, there's a lot of things that can create these autoimmune responses, tax the central nervous system, the immune system. And today we know a lot more about it, right? You'll come across people that have realized, hey, I've got gluten intolerance, or I've got other dynamics to watch and pay attention to. And so that really set me off on a journey to sort of think of things this way. One, you got to think about your exposures or where the bad stuff comes from. And anything you can do with your lifestyle to sort of clean it up, get outside, breathe some air, find the woods to fall to sort of walk in. It may not be so easy for you in Queens, but find some place, right, to get some fresh air. I was just listening this morning about warnings in New Delhi about the air, and they're telling people not to go outside, right? So I think both in an urban environment and a rural environment, you can have these things for different reasons. And I don't know that people think enough about the body burden or the taxation of your lungs or other parts of the body when you're kind of have these constant exposures. And in a modern world, go-go lifestyle, there's all kinds of man-made chemicals and things. I think there's 100,000+ identified man-made chemicals used in consumer products, nonstick cookware, your carpet that won't stain, flame retardant material in airplanes, fungicides, pesticides, herbicides that you find in conventional growing of crops and things. And so there's just a lot of exposures. And I'm a firm believer that just as you're trying to think about nutrition, maybe some clean eating, best you can, not just having ultra processed foods all the time, you got to think about the bad stuff, where it's coming from and how to get it out, as well as what you put in your body. And then there's specialty categories. We have some products that work with people on blood sugar issues, with some anti-aging products. So our approach is kind of get the bad stuff out, put the good stuff in, focus and concentrate on where people need to. I started Touchstone Essentials back in 2012, and that's really after a couple decades being in the field of nutrition. And that was a response to the fact that most supplements, most protein powders, greens powders, most of what people see at the grocery store or online, it's much different in terms of what it was made of, how it's produced, and what it delivers than they anticipate. And that's because label transparencies and what's approved in the US particularly, but this is true in a lot of the developed worlds, doesn't really give the consumer this really clear picture. So, if you're buying food that's passed to you through a drive-through window in a styrofoam container, you got a pretty good idea what's happening, right? You're not like, oh boy, I'm having my fruits and vegetables. This is a fuel stop, right? Might even be a delicious fuel stop, but you're gonna do this. But when you buy supplements, you often think you're replacing what's missing from the fruits and vegetables that you didn't eat, or whatever it happens to be. But most supplements, and when I say that, I'm really talking about 99% of supplements, they're manufactured really a lot like ultra-processed food. And so one of the reasons there's a great deal of criticism from the scientific community and medical doctors is they don't see supplements as a whole being effective as people perceive. And they're spending billions of dollars on an annual basis. I think in the US and Canada, we spend 40+ billion a year. And most of the time, what's happening there isn't delivering to people what they want. And I imagine there's people listening to us, they bought all kinds of supplements that didn't deliver on the promise, right? It's going to be an overnight thing or whatever it happens to be, and didn't deliver. And so we wanted to take it back to really the roots of nutrition. So for people that check us out, they're going to find that things are made from whole fruits and vegetables. It actually says broccoli, kale, cabbage, tomato, blueberries, whatever the focus happens to be on a particular product on the label. And they're going to see USDA organic, because we believe for several reasons that's important. One, we want to participate in the creation of an organic economy. Driving ourselves towards millions of acres growing organic fruits and vegetables means a few things. One of it means it's just less petrochemical based herbicides, fungicides, pesticides, things I talked about are really utilized, sprayed on crops, getting into the soil, the water, the air, so that there's some effort, right, to have things be cleaner. Because when we think about these things holistically, it's not just what you're putting in your body, it's what was involved in manufacturing. It's the farm workers, for example, that are working on these farms in conventional environments where their exposures to really real toxins, neurotoxins, cancer cluster creating toxins is really high. But it's because there's these market for it that goes unchecked by consumers. And so if we can nudge things along a little bit, we're a B Corp certified organization, which means we're focused on not just environmental issues associated with the manufacturing of our products. We are plastic neutral, right? To sort of try to do something in that regard. By supporting organic, we want to have more of a healthy production. I realize there's a role for convention, but it doesn't have to dominate everything. And so what we want to bring to consumers are not only convenient products that taste good and serve them and serve their concerns, but a brand that they can identify with from a personal standpoint of, what mark do they want to leave on the world? What do they want to support? And so kind of at a high level, that's who and what we are and sort of our value proposition to consumers.
Well, I got a million questions, and what you just said just inspired a thought that Gandhi says, "Be the change you want to see," right?
Yeah.
And by driving organic sources, you increase the demand,
Yeah.
and that will drive supply, and that will put pressure on the supply chain to create more of that. So the more organic you demand, the more organic they'll produce. That's going to relate down to the farmer that's picking it, and that's going to avoid potential birth defects when he reproduces because he's in direct contact with these things or in developing Parkinson's. My uncles, I'm originally from Jamaica. My uncles came up as farm workers and they worked on these orange plants, these orange plantations, and on. They were migrant workers working in Florida. So these planes would come over and spray the plants one day, and then all the oranges would turn yellow. So that's totally unnatural. Now, both of my uncle, one of my uncles eventually developed Parkinson's. And my other uncle, he had so many complications, I don't even know what it is. But I kind of trace it back to that environment because the rural environment that we came from in Jamaica, it was pretty much we use chicken poop and cow poop and all that. That was our fertilizer. We didn't use Roundup or DDT or whatever it was. You know what I mean? So um it's you by creating a product and an ecosystem or creating a demand for natural things, having a zero plastic kind of situation. It's not just helping you, it's not just sexy, it's also going to have repercussions, a butterfly effect throughout the future. So, like Gandhi says, be the change you want to see. If you want more people healthy, we have to make healthier choices regarding the products that we support. If it costs $1 more, guess what? That's $20 you don't have to give to a GoFundMe for somebody that's sick now. You know what I mean? So it's wonderful, and environmental factors, and I don't want to talk too long, but the yesterday I took my son to karate and the dojo was like just the air was just filled with Fabuloso. Fabuloso is this cheap cleaning product. I don't know if you ever heard
Yeah.
of it. And the issue at that facility, though, is that there's some issue either with the drainage or with something's going on where there's mold. So there's like a moldy smell in the building. So, I guess, when you don't know, you don't know what to do. They just think that, cleaning the place with Fabuloso and making it high concentration will solve the problem. Now, me personally, when I go inside a place with a lot of scents and artificial scents with phthalates and unknown chemicals in it, it immediately irritates me physically. And it's probably some psychological portion of it
Sure.
that's saying this is not healthy for me. So I wrote them a big old long thing last night saying, listen, get Surf Pro in there, get the mold out of here, get a plumber in there, figure it out, what's going on. Don't so these environmental factors are a real thing. You know what I mean? Like I said, my uncles got sick, in my opinion, from that. Now, another thing I was thinking about is I forgot already, but um maybe it'll come back to me. But tell me what zeolite is. What is zeolite?
Yeah, I will. And let me just say, I recognize what you said about the ripple effect of these things, and it's important just to acknowledge that I just because you throw the stone in the water and turn away and don't see it doesn't mean the ripple's not real. And getting people to realize that because it's not just what we're doing, it's the example we're establishing. So for your son to know, you recognize that, right? Make sure he knows you wrote that letter.
Right. Right.
right? I don't care how young he is. These
Right.
things make an impression because what you're describing is volatile organics.
Yes.
And people that clean professionally and expose to these things all the time, they have terrible neurotoxic impacts. And so, it doesn't always happen, but, you encourage people, say, cleaning a bathroom or bathroom stall, keep the door open at least. Wearing a mask, unless it's really a proper mask, maybe doesn't do a whole lot, but the noxious smell and things of that nature are real issues. And so I have a great deal of empathy for what you're describing, and too often for narrow-minded financial reasons, nobody takes the time to do a proper cleaning. And it won't be until some customers turn away or complain enough that something happens there. So zeolites. So in my, when I was talking about sort of at a high level what we do with detox, being conscious of what we're exposed to, but also then the detoxification. I had an education late 1990s, early 2000s about various types of materials that support the body's natural pathways to detox. And there's a lot of things there. I mean, I'll give you an example. If you look at green leafy vegetables, particularly cruciferous vegetables, support kind of the body's native processes, whether it's your bowel, your lymphatic system, sweat glands, breathing. Breathing releases toxins. There's a lot of things that support those dynamics. And then people get involved with cleanses, sort of a separate issue, right? You've probably heard of different types of enemas or herbal cleanses or things of this nature. But at the root of the problem are heavy metals and other environmental toxins that are so small, we're talking angstrom size, that even when you can't smell them or see them, they get into the cell structure of the body, and it's very difficult to get rid of them because they're non-essentials, which means the body doesn't have natural chemicals and pathways to manage, let's say, lead or mercury or things of this nature. And so unless you really try to do something externally, it's difficult to kind of lower that amount that gets into the body. And for some people, really becomes critical. I mean, we all know things like Flint, Michigan, when the water had lead in it. And by the way, that's a large urban center. That problem persists in rural America. I mean, it's thousands of water systems across this nation that will not pass a standard EPA test for lead in the drinking water. And that's not just true in America. I mean, it's true all over. It's just based upon standards and testing. And so, we know generally that lead, being a neurotoxin, can impact IQ level, cognitive abilities. In adults, the proper terminology is called executive function, which is just basically your ability to manage simple disciplines about your life, anger control, recognition of right and wrong, habits and things of this nature. And when you lose that, when you lose executive function, the deterioration is just profound. And so while some people manage this stuff pretty well, as they get older, there's this cumulative impact. We know things like Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, dementia. We know there's, from lifestyle modeling, some people are more vulnerable than others. We know genetics can play a role, or at least family histories. Family histories can be a little deceptive because they can also talk about family habits that carried forward through generations. And unfortunately, you talked about DDT. DDT still today, even though banned in the 70s, shows up in the cord blood of women that have just given birth. These things have half-lives that are well beyond our own lifespans. And so it's very difficult. We settled in on using zeolites strategically as a natural mineral. Zeolites, for those that don't know, they're common. There's multiple types of natural zeolites or synthetic zeolites. In our case, we use something called clinoptilolite, naturally mined in the U.S., clean, Prop 65 compliant, out of the ground. And that's because it enjoys GRAS status by the FDA. So it means it's generally recognized as safe, which means it doesn't really have a contraindication. Doesn't mean people on special medical treatments shouldn't talk to their doctor, but recognized by the FDA is kind of common with no contraindications. And so it's safe and effective in that sort of regulatory body. And it's incredibly powerful. So zeolites form when lava ash or lava collides with playa lakes or salt water. It's a naturally occurring mineral. And it's interesting in that if you looked at it under a microscope, it has almost like a Swiss cheese look to it with holes and channels. Those cages or channels have a negative charge natively to them. And things like cadmium, lead, mercury, other heavy metals have a positive charge. So when it's in the body and the zeolite comes in contact or proximity to these heavy metals, it literally will snap together like the north end and the south end of a magnet, right? And once it's there bound, and zeolites have a preference of both charge and size, because it's non-essential, the zeolite's non-essential, it's going to pass through the body assuming sort of normal and renal and bowel function most of the time in a 4 to 6 hour period of time. So it becomes this really easy way to carry toxins out of the body, different than like an herbal cleanse, which is dislodging things and moving them about the body that can create these Hertzheimer impacts. You don't really see that commonly with zeolites. We've sold million plus bottles of these products around the globe. We operate in some 50 countries. And so we have a really large sample of the ease of use. And so for someone looking to use something, right, it's this eloquent, simple process that can be used day in and day out. And I say it that way because exposure isn't limited to one period or one time of your day. I mean, unless you're living in a bubble, which is just kind of hard to fathom how that would occur. Exposures on an ongoing basis. So just like you're trying to get good nutrition in your body, good food choices, right? This is something designed to support this ongoing dynamic of detox. And it's something I believe in deeply. I mean, I have, since my first exposure to the subject matter in early 2000s, right? I have used zeolites. And I'm not going to be bashful about saying I think we have the best offering the public can get, both in terms of quality, scientific support, safety, and effectiveness. And so this is to me this underappreciated dynamic that can impact health because toxins disrupt the foundational function of the body at the hormonal level. As I said before, it can be neurotoxic. And so the zeolite, we size it properly. We have a cleansing process that's proprietary. So its bioavailability to the body that the user is unsurpassed as far as we're concerned. And so it's probably more than people ever wanted to know about zeolites.
Right.
But it's to me, it's kind of like fibers, this other little subject, right? It's kind of one of the most unsexy subjects you could discuss.
Mhm.
But if you want to talk about impact on health, mortality, how you feel, energy levels, it's really to me sort of unsurpassed and sort of these things that people can use to really make a difference.
Well, when I think about zeolite, I think about bentonite. I think about pumice, but I don't know if it's the same. I think those are volcanic type rocks, right? Bentonite
They
is.
are, but different types, and they
Mhm.
would not be safe or effective in the body. Bentonite can be used safely, but as a very narrow, it's almost like all of the clays. Let's just go to all that clay category. It's a very narrow impact. It's almost like a charcoal. It's more of a sweeper
Right,
in the bow.
right.
Zeolites sized properly, our nano-sized product is small enough to get into the soft tissue and bloodstream. And we know it travels throughout the body at a cellular level. So now we're talking about something entirely different than bentonite or other clays where the size or the property is such, it's primarily going to stay in the bowel and its effectiveness is more as a sweep, almost similar to a fiber. And so from a functionality standpoint, just the zeolite is far superior to anything else in that category.
Okay. Well, what I wanted to say is that it's like we're in the best of times and then we're in the worst of times because we're in the worst of times in the amount of pollutants that we've put into the environment and the amount of but at the same time, when we think about even these pesticides, they've afforded us the opportunity to feed a vast amount of people. Fortunately, that's it's made that available. But the wealth of the world, the wealth of the nations, I think, and our technology has reached a certain point where we understand there's sustainable ways to do things. We don't have to continue down that road, you know what I mean? We can still feed the world and do it in a proper way, and your product, um, it's going to be needed right now until we reach the point where I mean, there's no way we're going to remediate all the DDT. There's no way we're going to remediate all of all of the water, even the microplastics in the ocean and all that. So, it's not something that people should just start running around like the sky is falling, like a Chicken Little situation. But like you said, don't, I think you said like in the beginning, it's not about a hard line saying, oh, this time of the year I'm going to start doing that. You don't have to do that. You can make small step-by-step lifestyle changes to get yourself into a comfortable place, but never really, I don't think a knee-jerk response is the right response or an abrupt whatever. You know what I mean? We're slow to adapt to things sometimes. And when you go, like you said, cold turkey, it kind of prompts you to give up sometimes. So, it's better to ease your way into things. And almost every statement is political, but another thought that comes to my mind is, your mother was basically she developed this immune condition due to implants, which she got from the medical industry from a professional that said, "Oh, don't worry about it, it's safe."
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and but that was a terrible thing. But the benefit that came from it was that it inspired you to be who you are now. You know what I mean? So it wasn't in vain that
That's right.
that she had to go through that. You know what I mean? So, and there's a guy, Ho Chi Minh, it says, turn your pain into action. And that painful event, I think that, or I'm pretty sure it was a painful event for your
Oh,
family.
yeah.
Um, is now affording you the opportunity or gave you the inspiration to help other people, you know? And, we got like 5 minutes, so you can just let me know what's going on. If you got anything that you would like to add, or, hopefully if you got anything that you can offer our listeners, I'm willing to listen. But I mean, you've said all that I would want to know, it's a natural earth extract. It's been evaluated under Prop 65, under the multiple other certifications. It's something that's gonna help you detox and get some of these, what I mean? These
Yeah.
factors, minimize some of the damage that's happened. So, and it's not the cure all and be all. It doesn't mean that you don't have to go to your doctor. It doesn't mean that you're not gonna, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's something to integrate in your process towards getting to a place of what's that agency? What do you say what the older people suffer from?
I think agencies, oh, if you're talking about where people are sick of Alzheimer's,
Right, right,
dementia, but it's important where you said agency. Some of this to me is about establishing agency for yourself.
right.
Right. I have this thing and I'll kind of wrap it up. And I do want to offer something to your audience, but I agree with all that you said in your observations, right? I'm on board with what you said. I have this sort of, I've accumulated certain things that I've learned to live by, right? I want to leave the place better. And I found it. That's not only in my daily activities when I go somewhere, it's just also how I want to live and leave the earth. Years ago, I was traveling in Japan and I watched this young family pull out their food and put it on the table and, eat. And a couple young kids, super messy. And so meal was over. Parents didn't freak out, right? And just the meticulous nature with which the mom and the dad cleaned the area, wiped down the table. I'm certain it was cleaner when they left than it was when they got there. And I just thought that was such a beautiful expression of just recognizing I'm not here for a moment, I'm here for others as well. And so I have this thing I live by, which is if you know better, do better. It's hard to blame somebody that doesn't know better, but if you know better, do better. If you let your kids see that on your choices, you let things like that, that's how you impact the world. And so that's our approach, right? We know better and we want to do better and give people choices. They may not take the choices. We just want to give them the choices. So it's society, right? You can look at, we took lead out of gasoline. That's a big deal. We banned DDT. That's a big, so we get there, right? It's just incremental, not as fast. My My kids accuse me of being an incrementalist. They want to rip the Band-Aid off. I said, I think you're going to get older and appreciate this incrementalist stuff. So anyway, it's a whole nother discussion. Um, Thank you for the time, and for those that have stuck with us this long. I'm going to send you a link
Mhm.
that you can put into the show notes, that if folks want to explore the zeolites or some of our other stuff, they can get $50 off. And then we have great subscription programs to lower the cost for people. Oftentimes, most places, shipping is for free. So we recognize, in today's world, free money is not there, right? Not a lot of leftover at the end of the week or the end of the
Right.
month. We try to be conscious of that. There is a cost. Can't get away from that. And so we'll send you that for your show notes. And we get great customer service. I think we get 60 some thousand 5-star reviews. So people have questions. Our team is quite willing to help. We have a blog with just so much information for people that are really trying to learn and impact themselves. And of course, everything's got a guarantee. So if somebody's dissatisfied, we want to give you your money back. We want happy customers. So I'll give you that to put in your show notes. And thank you for letting me ramble for a little bit with you about this stuff. And maybe there's at least one or two people out there that'll make some decisions to improve their habits and what they're doing, and live a little more healthy, a little longer. That'd be a good thing.
Yeah. Eddie, I greatly appreciate the opportunity and greatly appreciate the education about even zeolite. And, we could have spoken for 5 hours because I agree with just about everything that you're doing. I didn't really get to ask too much about your other products, because I'm sure you have a variety of things, not only for internal, but also for aesthetics. And, I hope that we can talk again.